Good afternoon, everybody. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker here on the Full Court Press, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, streaming on 1069thefan.com and on the 1069 The Fan mobile app. Happy Friday to you. Reminder, as we mentioned yesterday, we are actually not here in studio live, so the Full Court Press text line, if you send something in, we will not be responding. Not that we wouldn't want to, but we're not here. We're both eastern part of the United States.
Yeah, we've both taken our talents east.
Yes. Just happened to be that some things that we had planned lined up that we were both gone at the same time, which is unusual. But we thought we at least do something to still provide some unique original content for you on a Friday afternoon. Can't say that it'll be the same next Monday or Tuesday.
We'll see. There's potentially some plans I think we might have. So
yeah, so we'll just stay tuned. That's what you call a good old fashioned tease there in the radio business.
There you go.
Yeah, but a couple things that we wanted to look into. There was a recent article published on CBSSports.com that kind of went through. They've been putting through different power rankings, if you will, for various conferences for college football, the upcoming college football season, and they did them for the power conferences, as you might imagine that they would. You designate a special article just for those individual conferences, and then they lump everybody else together, the group of five.
Yeah, because that's what it is. You have the power conferences. Well, you have the Big Ten, SEC, rest of the Power Four, and then all other 5-6 conferences, the G5, whatnot.
Yes.
That's just one big conference. You can all fight amongst yourselves.
It's one big pile to fight amongst yourselves to get to the top of the heap. But what makes it interesting, though, is to consider, what will be the top teams in the group of five this year. It carries a little bit more weight with the expanded college football playoff, which will occur this upcoming football season. So looking at who they project to be among the top teams in the group of five, they didn't go too deep. I think they listed 12 teams, but among those 12, 3 of them are out of the Mountain West.
Yeah, and I think the Mountain West has had a bit of a dip in football where they've not had a top tier team. They've typically their best teams have been around 8 or 9 wins. They're not getting these double-digit win teams consistently, teams that are really threatening to make the, recently it was, New Year's Six Bowls. Now it's going to be college football playoff. I don't know if this year will change that. Maybe, but you would like to see the Mountain West move up. And, these power rankings give some hope that at least there will be one team that'll be a true threat to make the playoff as one of the G5 teams.
Yeah, according to this CBS Sports article, they've got Boise State as the top group of 5 team in their power rankings.
Yeah, Boise State, it's been a rough few years only winning 8 or 9 games. It's been a true rough path for them. My goodness, last year they were doing so bad, they won the Mountain West Conference.
And they fired their coach.
Yeah, it was so bad. It was so horrible for Broncos fans. I can't even imagine what they're going through.
The struggle is real.
They're a trash program. They've been driven into the dirt. My goodness, there's no coming back from what they went through, Eric.
It's going to be it'll be a challenge for a new coach, Spencer Danielson, for sure. But there's certainly the way that the team finished last year. After Avalos was fired, it seemed to be a renewed energy and excitement and invigoration behind what Danielson was doing that got them to that point where they could win the Mountain West Conference title. And now the new additions are bringing Dirk Cutter back as offensive mastermind behind Boise State's renaissance that they had 20 years ago. But beyond that, besides the coaching aspect of Boise State, what they have going for them, Ashton Genty is going to be back, and he is a powerhouse running the ball for Boise State.
Yeah, well, powerhouse running and catching. He is a dual-threat running back. Dude probably could have gone to the NFL and been a decent prospect. I'm kind of surprised he didn't with how good he is. The coaching aspect can sometimes be fool's gold. I think where you fall in love with the coach because of a handful of games, but you don't really want to read too much into that because it's just, well, it could be fool's gold. You don't want to base any conclusions off of that. They played well with Spencer Danielson. They do bring back good offensive coordinator, but more importantly, it is the talent. You mentioned G&T. They bring in Malachi Nelson at quarterback. They're bringing back talent. I think there was some returning production rankings, updated returning production rankings from ESPN, where Boise State is 35th in the country in returning production, 68% of returning production. I know G&T is a lot of that, but still, they return a good amount of production. They're a team that is fairly consistently reloaded their talent. So with a late season turnaround last year to turnaround again, they were like 2 or 3 losses. So I don't know if it was much of a turnaround, but they looked a lot better late in the season. End up winning the conference title. They return good players. They bring in good recruits. There's every indication that Boise State can reach some of the heights they were 5, 6, 7 years ago when they were 10, 11, 12 win team. I don't know if that happens this year, but at least it feels like more of a possibility than in recent seasons.
Yeah, so they've got Boise State listed as their top overall group of 5 school in their power rankings. Liberty at number 2, Memphis at number 3. Further down the list, we have to go to number 10 to find our next Mountain West school that's being listed here, and that's UNLV. Coach Odom certainly turning things around there at UNLV. Exciting year last year with a very dynamic quarterback, but he leaves, goes to USC. But that's a team that still has a lot of other guys, a lot of dudes that are coming back, and there definitely seems to be a culture change happening with the Rebels, where they're going to be a team that you have to watch out for in the Mountain West.
Yeah, this is one where I've got a whole strength of schedule and all that calculation I've got on a spreadsheet, and it really underrates UNLV because a lot of it is it includes a calculation of a team's record over the last 5 years, and UNLV's record over the last 5 years is terrible. But I think when you have a 9-5 season, and when they're okay in returning production, I think they're average. They're 66th out of 134 teams, so slightly above average, not bad. The biggest loss, I think, is at quarterback because it's not like he was a fantastic prospect at quarterback, but freshman of the year, and now there's a question there. You don't know what you're going to get out of that, and you have the returning talent around quarterback, but what do you have at quarterback? And since QB is a linchpin of the offense, sometimes of the whole team, that's where there's a big question mark. If they get that solved, then bam, they're another 8, 9, 10 win team again. I wouldn't be all that surprised. But yeah, they've got that pretty big question mark. But I think justifiably considered a team that can jump to the top, that be in this top 12 of the G5 in the preseason, because you can see that potential in this team.
Right, and it was a team that did some definite improvements offensively, which is what kind of grabs headlines, but it was also a team defensively that was playing very well, and a lot of that defense is going to be back to help them this upcoming season. Then right behind them on the CBS Sports Power Rankings for G5 conferences is number 11, Fresno State. Coach Tedford has experience on his side as a coach, but now also as a squad. You've got a returning quarterback, returning running back. You've got a strong offensive nucleus back for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I feel like Fresno State is actually almost underrated here. I get that there are massive questions about that defense. They lost some pretty big names on that defense, but you look at what they bring back on offense, and Fresno State's generally been consistently good. They've not been superb the last few years, but 9 wins last year, and I very much think that this is a team that should be one of the top contenders for the Mountain West, potentially up there with Boise State. So I think Fresno State's actually kind of underrated here.
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, getting into our own listings of Mountain West Conference power rankings, I actually have Fresno State as number one. I think that Fresno State is very underrated in the CBS Sports list, and I put the Bulldogs as my top team in the Mountain West coming into this 2024 season.
So I wasn't that high on Fresno State. I think they're underrated, but not that much. I went with the tried and true, put Boise State at the top. I think just because they have the fewest holes to be concerned about. Like the possibility for the Broncos to be able to get back to that top tier program that they've liked to brag about themselves being, instead of being just a consistently good one. If there are some injuries, or if it turns out that Spencer Danielson's a bit of fool's gold as a head coach, yeah, they could drop off. But again, the worst this program has done is 8 wins, in this century. So the floor is pretty high for them. The ceiling is decently high. So I have Boise State at number one. It's the boring choice, but there's no other team that I feel like doesn't have big concerns.
Yeah, and Fresno State, they do have concerns defensively, but they've got very solid quarterback, very solid offensive line, a very solid running back. Tedford's a very experienced coach. This is a team that won 9 games last year, and 65% of their production coming back. So a decent amount for Fresno State.
Yeah, it's third in the conference, 51st overall. Only 3 percentage points in production behind Boise State, so I know it's about 20 ranks, but,
Yeah, pretty close.
In terms of a percentile rank, they're not far behind. So it's a team that Fresno State should be good. But yeah, I kind of gave Boise State the edge there.
Earlier this week, Brett McMurphy, Action Network, put together their projected win totals for teams throughout the Mountain West, and they've got Fresno State at 7.5.
Yep.
I would take the over on that.
Yeah, I'd take the over too. Boise State at 8.5. That I think is a better line, because there is a world in which I can see Boise State only winning 8 games. Partly because you look at Boise State and Fresno State, and something to look at this season is both these teams play really tough non-conference schedules. So
right.
The possibility of these guys being 10-win teams is relatively low, barring them having one of their banner seasons, their top seasons in recent memory. So overall win totals may struggle a bit. In conference, though, I think these two teams will do pretty darn well. But they have some pretty tough non-conference matchups. I think Boise State plays. I don't have my. If you give me a few clicks here, I've got my spreadsheet with all
the Jeopardy theme.
Yeah, Boise State at Oregon, Fresno State at Michigan. 2 of the toughest non-conference games for anybody in the conference overall, and so it's going to be tough for those. And Boise State has Washington State and Oregon State. Granted, Oregon State may be taking a nosedive. We'll have to see. But yeah, some pretty tough non-conference slates for both of these teams. I think in my kind of mathematically computed rankings, I'm trying to see. I don't know if it's going to let me. Oh, I have to enable editing on my spreadsheet. Yeah, I have Boise State as the hardest non-conference schedule. Fresno State is the 3rd toughest non-conference schedule. So that's the overall point I was making there. Spend a little extra time talking about spreadsheets.
Yeah, Fresno State, they open at Michigan, and then they've got Sacramento State and New Mexico State as their other non-conference. Of course, Washington State, I guess you still consider that a non-conference game.
Yeah, I think I put it in my non-conference calculation, I think is how I calculated that.
Yeah. So number 2, I'll let you lead out with who's number 2 on your list.
Most people could probably guess I have Fresno State at number 2. And I think I've said most of my piece there. And you said, obviously, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, a lot of that. Concerns on defense, but very much a team that has the potential to be the best offense in the Mountain West. Boise State will certainly have a say about that, but I think Fresno State's going to be a good team, and I think they've been underrated to some degree by multiple people. I think it was Chris Murray put out his own power rankings, and I think he had Fresno State at like 4th. I was like, he's a 3rd or 4th, I can't remember, but yeah, I think Fresno State's going to be up there. They're one of the teams that I kind of put in this tier 1. Like these are the teams that I expect to be contending. Like if they're not contending, that is failure for the season. If they're not contending for the title. And, I've got Boise State, Fresno State in there. So Fresno State number 2.
I have UNLV as my number 2.
All right.
I like what, as we talked about with the CBS Sports report there, I really like what Coach Odom is doing there at UNLV. I know they lost their dynamic quarterback, but they've got a lot of very solid players coming back. There's a lot of potential for this team. There seems to be a lot of energy in Las Vegas for UNLV football developing and growing. And this isn't just momentum. This is a coach that's really turning things around there. And they surprised, I think, a lot of people last year. They're going to be able to build on that this upcoming year. Projected win totals for them, 7.5. I would take the over on UNLV as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not as high on UNLV as I think other people are. Like putting them in the top 12 of that G5 power rankings. I just think the concerns over quarterback, the concerns over just program consistency, because one good year does not a program make. I mean, just ask Utah State how that's going for them.
Very true.
They have one good year every few years and every couple of years. And so for UNLV, it's kind of like I see the roster and I see the talent. I saw last season, but it's still kind of okay, prove it, you can do it again. Because that's where, respect to what they did last season. One of the best teams in the Mountain West. Clearly, they proved that. Even though, they lost 3 games to end the season, okay, that's a bit of a letdown for them. But, kind of show me you can do it again. And so until you prove that, I'm still relatively high on UNLV, but not quite that high.
UNLV does have a pretty tough non-conference schedule ahead of them. These guys are testing themselves. They open at Houston. They come home to take on Utah Tech. They'll just drive a few hours south from St. George. Then they travel to Kansas. They host Syracuse, and they also will go to Oregon State. So that's a pretty heavy non-conference schedule for UNLV.
Yeah, it is pretty tough, and then they have one of the harder conference schedules. I have them as the 4th toughest conference schedule. So it's going to be tough for them. They're not going to.
But a lot
have
of those tough
easy.
matchups they play in Las Vegas.
That's true. And I didn't include a home and away calculation in here. I didn't want to get didn't want to throw in too many factors because I'm not a statistician, so I don't want this to be super complicated. I just want to get a general idea. So it'll help them, but like I said, upper part of the Mountain West, and I'd be surprised if they weren't. But like winning the Mountain West championship, there's a few teams I'd put above them.
All right, so we're to number 3. Who's number 3 on your list?
So I don't think as many people are high. I think I saw one power ranking that had this team like 6th or 7th, and I think not justifiably. And their over/under win total is pretty low. But I've got Air Force. The number one reason why everyone puts them really low or not very high is this one stat, Eric, and that is the Air Force is dead last in returning production.
Yeah.
But you know what? One team in the entire college football landscape, I don't care what returning production they have.
Yes.
It's Air Force.
It's Air Force. It's the system. It's the structure. It's Coach Calhoun. It doesn't matter. He only plays juniors and seniors. It's very rare that you see a sophomore, let alone a freshman on his squad on the field.
Yeah, like you look at from 2022 to 2023, what did they lose? Like they lost like I'm suddenly forgetting their names. It tells you about the Air Force system. You tend to forget their names. Like their quarterback, top 2 or 3 rushers. Still, 8-9 wins last season. Still a good team. Still were contending fairly late. I mean, they started 8-0 and then they kind of fell to pieces. I don't even know what happened, but they were a team that at one point was threatening a New Year's Six bowl. But they have to replace a lot of guys, and they lost a lot of guys on defense, especially. That's one area where it can hurt them because the offensive system just runs and you plug and play anybody. Defense is a little different. You do really need good talent there, but Air Force can be fine. They've been fine year over year over year. They're going to be one of the top teams in the Mountain West, and I expect them to be in the top 4 once again, despite the lost production. I think everybody knows returning production isn't necessarily a thing to worry about with Air Force. They do this song and dance every year. It's just this year it's a little more extreme. Because last year they were pretty low in returning production as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Largely because of the guys they lost at quarterback and running back. 2,000-yard rusher and another 1,000-yard rusher they lost in one season.
They replaced plug and play.
They replaced him just fine. And the guy you expect, like John Lee Eldred, I expected him to be the far and away leading rusher. I don't think he was their leading rusher last year. So you can try and predict Air Force to be up or down. Just expect them to be up and roll with it.
Yeah, I agree. Air Force gets a bad rap when you look at that statistic alone. But for me, number 3, that's where I have Boise State. I'm not going to leave Boise State out of the top tier.
No, you can't.
Can't. Just too much returning production. There is a lot of excitement with Coach Danielson, but this is why I have them at 3 and not higher. I don't know if that's going to be sustainable. That's my biggest question about Boise State. Coach Cutter, I think, is a great offensive mind, though he's been in and out of football. He's retired, and they pulled him back in. I just wonder how much fire he has in him. And Genty, great running back. They've got a lot of returning players who are going to help make this a very solid team. Don't get me wrong. I still think Boise State's going to be very tough to beat. But I don't have them in number 1 or number 2 because I'm not sure if Danielson is just going to work out as a head coach. As a replacement guy, everybody's going to rally behind him, and he's an excitable guy. He's got high energy, but I just don't know if that's sustainable over the course of a full season. And that's the biggest reason I have Boise State knocked a few notches here below those other 2 teams.
Yeah, that's what I talked about where it's like maybe it's fool's gold. He was the solution for Boise State late last season. They were kind of mired in not being undefeated. such dire straits for Boise State.
Yes.
But he was their solution to ensuring they won the Mountain West title. And I can I share some of your concerns? Obviously not that much because I still have Boise State at number 1. I think the program can kind of go beyond the head coach sometimes. But I think he's good enough of a head coach to be one of the contenders. But, yeah, there is a chance that maybe it just isn't going to work long term, that maybe he's one of those guys that's more of a coordinator, better as a coordinator, worked as an interim coach for a few games. But we'll see. It's something we're going to have to see. There's a lot of new head coaches that we're going to have to kind of see.
Yeah, a lot in the Mountain West this year.
We'll be getting into that.
Yes. But that's the first part of our look at our own power rankings for the Mountain West Conference. Would it be your top tier? How many teams deep is your top tier?
I had 4.
Okay. I'm okay with going 4 deep. I don't think I go any further than that.
Yeah, after that, it's like there's teams that maybe could contend. Let's say I have top tiers, like teams I expect to contend. Tier 2 is like I could see them contending, but there's like a really big question mark. Some of these teams have question marks, but there's some teams that are like, you really got to fix something. Like, really badly got to fix something. If they do, they're a contender. If not, middling.
Yeah. And then there's good team, but not contending team.
Yeah, like shooting for a bowl game. A lot of those teams in Tier 2 going to be shooting for bowl games. Then in Tier 4, it's like, we'll see it. Or Tier 3. Yeah, it's like, but yeah.
Roll the dice. So more on that. The other teams will reveal who they are and what our rankings are throughout the Mountain West Conference. Teams 4 through 12, maybe even a look at the other 2 kind of non-voting members of the Mountain West, what we think about Washington State and Oregon State. That's coming up next here on the Full Court Press, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, The Fan. Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker, looking at the upcoming Utah State. Yeah, we'll talk about Utah State, but also the Mountain West power rankings. How would we rank Mountain West schools? A couple different factors we're looking at. Coaching experience, playmakers, returning production, building on last year's success, strength of schedule. I know, Jason, you've looked into that more than I have, I'll admit, but definitely worth considering when you look at some of these schedules. And last segment, we got through the top 3 teams, looking at the 2024 football season for the Mountain West. And to finish off our top tier, because I think we both agree the top 4 teams are kind of in a class of their own. And so coming in at number 4, just to recap, for me, the top 3 are number 1, Fresno, number 2, UNLV, and number 3, Boise State. Your top 3 are very different than mine.
Yeah, I've got Boise State at 1, Fresno State at 2, and Air Force at 3.
And so at number 4, to complete your top tier,
this is where I have UNLV. Now, to be honest, I was actually pretty torn whether to have UNLV or Air Force at 3. This is a very close race for me. I was pretty comfortable with Boise State 1, Fresno State 2. Not much, wiggle room for me there. It's just that's where I wanted to have them. That's where I felt comfortable putting them. I went back and forth a couple of times with Air Force and UNLV at 3 and 4. Ended up going with UNLV at 4. I think a bit of a tougher conference schedule. Could end up hindering them. I think Air Force, I had them as one of the easiest conference schedules. I think second easiest based on the calculations that I ran. Fresno State actually came in as the easiest, so I think that's one of the things where I had them a little higher than some people do. I know you had them higher than even me, which surprised me. I thought I was going to be a little alone in the Fresno State hype. But, yeah, I think Air Force a little higher. But, yeah, UNLV, I know we went over this a lot in the last segment where they have the potential. I have some concerns. Quarterback, general program consistency. If those problems, if Barry Odom is the guy, then throw that concern out the window. That's just something that I can't know at this point. If that's the case, they'll probably be fine. And if they have a quarterback, if the quarterback is fine, then put them right up there with Fresno State and Boise State because there aren't a whole lot of other holes with this team. So I just have those concerns. Not willing to put them. I have them in my top tier. Like, don't call me a Fresno State.
UNLV?
It's like rattling off all the children. You can't get them right.
Yes.
Doug, Jared, I have UNLV in the top tier. I do have Fresno and Boise State in the top tier, but yeah, I have UNLV in the top tier. So don't call me a Rebels hater. But I'm not going to put them quite up there with a Boise State or a Fresno State.
And see, this is where I have Air Force. So we all have the same 4 teams, just in the top tier, just in different orders. But for Air Force, yeah, like we've said, this is a plug-and-play system. Coach Calhoun, he's the most experienced, most veteran coach in this conference. For all the things that we love to make fun of about him, he's a really good coach. And he finds ways to replace guys who get injured or replace guys who graduate or move on in their service. And I don't see anything different with this Air Force squad for this year. Projected wins for them, 5.5. That seems a little. Yeah, that seems just really soft.
That's just entirely based on the returning production number. There is no other reason to justify that low of a number.
That's a team that won 9 games last year. They went 5-3 in conference play. Air Force. I don't see Air Force, having less than 7 or 8. Certainly not 5.5. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, like if you look over the last decade, you have 3 cases where they've not won more than that. What that would be 5.5. One of those was 2020, where they only played 6 games. They went 3-3, so project that out to 12 games. Maybe they would have gone 6-6. Might have been close. But then they went 5-7 in 2 of the years, and those are their worst years over the last decade or so. They are very consistently hitting, 10 wins. And in a lot of those years, having to replace a lot of production. So I think it's pretty unfair to be putting the win total like that low. Like, is it possible? I guess they had back-to-back 5-7 seasons a while ago. Well, that was a while ago. This is a good team. This is a good program. 4 out of the last 5 seasons, again, the one exception being the COVID year, this team has won 9 games. 3 out of the last 5, 10 wins.
Yeah, very solid program, very good coach. Quirky, says weird things, but he's a good coach.
If you have a coach that says weird things and he consistently puts up 10-win seasons, you probably take that.
You take that. So we slide into our second tier, and at number 5, I've got Colorado State. This is one I debated a lot. Jay Norvell has been kind of up and down on his coaching consistency, but this is a team that has a lot of players returning. They are going to struggle defensively, replacing Kamara, who is just a defensive stud. But they do have a quarterback who kind of got forced into being the starter last year as a young player, but a lot of experience now under his belt coming back. He's got great wide receivers. This is an offense that likes to get up and go, and I've got Colorado State and he has a solid offensive line in front of him. So that's why I've got Colorado State at number 5 on my list.
Yeah, I don't have them quite as far, quite that high. I do have them in kind of, I think, probably the same tier. I struggled with 5, 6, and 7 because I could probably reorder them if I did this same list tomorrow. I might end up reordering all 3 of them. But I decided to play the optimist a bit and throw Utah State in here at number 5. It is being very optimistic to put them at 5 here because basically they're the next, the top team of the second tier, which I can't guarantee they're going to be the top team in the second tier because there's some decent teams here. And like I said, kind of as I described this second tier, I could see them contending if, and there's some big ifs, if Spencer Petras turns out to be pretty good, if the defense makes some really big improvements. You might call them an iffy team because of how many ifs they have attached, but it looks like they've addressed a lot of those concerns. Those ifs are still there, but there's a possibility they could be, nipping at the heels of some of the teams in Tier 1, especially because I don't think they have to play Air Force this year. I don't know if they play. Trying to look at their schedule. I mean, they do have to play Boise State and UNLV, but I think they avoid Fresno State.
Yep.
And Air Force. So
correct.
You're avoiding a couple of teams, so they're on the easier end of the non-conference schedule, and I don't think their conference schedule.
Yeah.
And I think their non-conference, it has a couple of difficult teams, but they can very easily go 2-2 in non-conference.
Yeah.
Maybe
Agreed.
get a win over Utah. I kind of doubt that because Utah is really good, even if it's at home. But still, I think Utah State has a pretty good chance of being in the kind of upper middle class, so to speak, of the Mountain West.
Yeah, it's a good thought. In fact, I've got Utah State at number 6, so it's very close to where you put the Aggies. This is Blake Anderson is among the more experienced coaches in the conference. We know
it's a pretty low bar, to be honest.
Yeah, it's be here 2 years and you're already one of the more experienced.
Does Troy
coaches.
Calhoun have as many coaching years at his current school as everyone else in the Mountain West combined?
It's probably close. That would be really close to add that up. But Utah State was one that I did debate between where to put them or Colorado State. Ultimately, the questions on defense for Utah State, maybe I just know those questions more than I know Colorado State's, and that has me more concerned with what Utah State can do at linebacker and defensive line to stop opponents. I like the quarterback opportunity there. It's intriguing. The quarterback depth is being improved a little bit, but it's not. I don't know if it's the great depth that it was going into spring practice. It's clearly not. But I think that there are some really nice aspects of this football team for Utah State and Blake Anderson. And yes, they did lose a number of guys, but the main contributors, there were a few that did leave that were playmakers for Utah State, but not to the degree that this team went through a year ago. And so for that, I've got Utah State at number 6. I had a hard time putting them higher. I can't put them lower than that.
So in number 6, now, mind you, I was torn enough about this that I actually wrote somebody else and then instead wrote Wyoming. I think they are losing a longtime head coach, and that always is a question mark, though they are hiring internally. So you think maybe they can keep some of that program consistency. And Wyoming, they're returning a lot on the defense. A lot of the Mountain West seems to be like, oh, they're returning a lot on offense, but their defense.
Right. Yes.
For Wyoming, it kind of seems to be the opposite, where they have a lot of good defensive talent. The offense, bit of a question mark. It was a question mark last year, and they lost some key guys. So, bit iffy there, but I think with Wyoming, they're consistently solid on defense. And if they get a couple of right pieces on offense, they'll be fine. Especially if they get, powered running game, which is a strength that they've had at times on the last, decade or so. And if they have that, they can be a good team. I'd probably have a hard time seeing Wyoming really contending without like a big surprise. But again, if they solve some of those question marks, they could be up there with, the UNLVs and Air Forces, maybe Fresno State, Boise State.
Yeah, I've so at number 7, that's where I have Wyoming.
Yep.
So very close. The 60% returning production. New coach Jay Sawvell. He was their defensive coordinator for several years, and so he's familiar with the culture, familiar with the players. I like promoting from within generally, but it's his first time as a head coach, so there's a question there. He knows the defense well, and that's the strength of Wyoming, but what are they going to do offensively? And that's why I've got them at 7. This is a team with projected win totals at 6.5, which seems a little strong for me, but it's probably about right for Wyoming.
Yeah, I think they're going to be chasing a bowl game. They're very much going to be in contention for that. They're not going to be a bad team. And so I didn't want to put them below average. That's why I had Wyoming at 6. They're going to be a good team. They've got some question marks at coach on an offense, but they're consistent. So at 7, that's where I put Colorado State. Partly because I was thinking about like they were supposed to break out last year too, to be a better team. Granted, I don't know if anybody's having them as a breakout team. A lot of them will rank them 5 or 6th. I think I'm a little more pessimistic on Colorado State than some people, especially given they have some pretty dang good talent on this team, especially on offense. But their defense was horrible last year, and they lost like superstar level defensive talent from that team, like guys who got drafted in the NFL draft. So your defense is already that bad, and you lost your best players. Like, how are they going to pull that off? Granted, you probably could say a lot of the same things about Utah State, but they return Ike Larson. They return some of the good guys on defense. And so it's, I don't know, it's got Colorado State a little ways down. Maybe I'm underrating them a little too much, but they've not won more than 5 games since 2017. So, and they've had Torrey Horton on the team for how many years now? How many years has he been the top receiver in the Mountain West? Justifiably so. Has that fixed anything? No, it hasn't.
Well, so you and I, we same teams in the same tiers, just slightly different order.
Yeah.
I don't think we've had one that's been the same yet.
I don't think so.
I don't think we have. So number 8 will be interesting to see if we have the same team at number 8.
I don't think so. I don't think we will. I'm going to be honest. So, yeah, this moves into the tier 3. I'm assuming we have the same level of tiers here.
Yeah.
This is I don't really see it. Maybe there's a team that can pull a 2021 Utah State, but I ain't seeing it. Number 8, I got Hawaii.
Wow, we have a winner.
Oh, do we? I didn't think you'd put Hawaii that high.
We finally have a match at number 8.
Yeah, Hawaii, it's 7th in the country in returning production and 5-7 last year. And I think that equates to Hawaii being not the worst. And I got them at 8th, but I think they're going to be chasing a bowl game. And, I think there's a chance for them to be a really dynamic offense. You worry about that defense, but I think Hawaii, they'll be the best of the worst.
This is a team that Hawaii could be better than 8th. They've got probably the best quarterback in the conference playing for Hawaii, Braden Shager. This guy threw for over 3,500 yards last year and 26 touchdowns. Timmy Chang, last year it was kind of eyes wide open as being a head coach, learned a few things, and is getting better as a head coach. They went 5-8. And this is a team that continues to improve. And as you said, a lot of guys coming back. 81% of returning production on this team. So that's I've got them 8th. I don't think they're higher than the Aggies or the Rams or the Cowboys. But that's a team to definitely watch out for. There's still a significant number of questions on this Hawaii team, especially defensively.
Yeah, I think the big problem is you have the flashy stats, 3,500 yards, arguably the best quarterback, at least statistically, but as a team that's still ranked in the 100s in points per game. Like, they didn't convert a lot of that to points, partly because they didn't have no run game.
Yeah. Yeah, and defensively they have a hard time stopping opponents as well.
Yeah, that too. That's the other thing.
So,
no run game, not scoring, and giving up a lot of points. But when you return basically everybody, that's a chance for a lot of internal growth. You're not losing any of that production, and then you're adding to that with the recruits that you bring in. So there's maybe potential, although again, I don't see them being much better than chasing a bowl game. Some improvement, but not much more than that.
Then number 9.
I've got San Diego State. Now, to be honest, even though I have them as the second team in this lower tier, this is the team that I would be the least surprised if they just completely jumped out of this tier and not only jumped up to tier 2, but maybe even tier 1. Like, this is keep your eye on them, because this may be the team that has that first-year head coach that just explodes. I don't see it happening, but I'm just saying I have a contingency plan for if that happens. Partly because San Diego State has typically been a good program. The last couple of years have really been the exception, where they've been solid. It is a new coach, new style, new identity. That's a big reason why I don't see it year 1. Although in this year of transfer portal, maybe you can completely remake a team in one season. It's happened before. But I think just with San Diego State, they're probably going to be taking this a little slower. They'd love it to go fast, but I think it's going to take more than 1 year to revamp this team and get them back to where they've typically been. Because San Diego State in football doesn't really belong with the other names in this tier, with where they've been.
Yeah, not normally.
So I think it may not happen year 1, but I think good things are ahead for San Diego State, just maybe not quite in year 1.
We match again, Jason.
There we go.
I have the Aztecs there. Yeah, this team lost half of its production from a year ago, a little bit more than that. Total change in culture, where you're bringing in an offensive-minded coach, try to stoke this team up offensively. They've got the tools to still be good defensively. They've always struggled these last several years with being able to score points. So maybe Sean Lewis can inject some offensive excitement into this team, trying to change their culture. A team that only won 4 games last year, but was competitive. And if they can figure out how to move the ball and find the end zone, they could be a lot better than they have been. But it's a big culture change, and that's going to be something that's going to take a little bit of time to get the right players on that roster to execute it how he wants it done. And even then, I don't know that I'm still sold on how he is as an offensive coach.
Yeah, well, it's one of those you got to wait and see. There's the chance of all the teams in this lower tier. It's the highest chance of being that surprise team, but there's a reason they'd be a surprise team.
Yes,
because as things stand right now, they don't look good for this year. Kind of never know though.
At number 10,
I want to hear who you got.
For number 10, I've got San Jose State.
I think we're going to match the rest of the way.
Ken Nui-Matalolo is the biggest reason I've got them at number 10 and not number 12. New head coach, very experienced, spent a lot of time at Navy, obviously. This is a team that is decimated after their coach left and to be the head coach at Arizona. But this is, I only have them at 10 and not worse because of Ken Nui-Matalolo. And I'm just curious to see what he can do there. This was a team that had a decent record last year, was a decent team. So he'll have some players to deal with. Yes, there's only like 36% returning production, but he will have some guys to work with who had experience last year.
So I had San Jose State 10 mainly just because I don't feel like that they're a doormat of the Mountain West anymore. They did get absolutely wrecked by off-season attrition, but one of the teams below San Jose State is in a similar situation, and the other is, well, we'll get to them in a minute. But San Jose State, 7 wins in 3 of the last 4 seasons. I know Brent Brennan probably a big part of that, but he got that program to the point where I'm not going to just have them as you don't write them down as an automatic win on your schedule. We're going to have to see how they deal with losing so much production, but I think San Jose State is in a decent enough spot that, got them at 10, kind of a question mark. But again, they're not going to be the doormat that some of the teams below them are, which, to be honest, I probably should have made an extra tier, a tier 4. Because now that I think about it, I don't think the teams at 11 and 12 should share the same space as 8 through 10.
This is my tier 4.
Okay. I'll add another line in there. I'll make it tier 4. I didn't have one initially, but I think I should have one.
So then this is the bottom here for me. I've got New Mexico at number 11.
Yeah, that's where I got them.
Bronco Mendenhall coming in, trying to change the culture there, trying to breathe new life. This is where he spent time as an assistant, where he got his start in coaching. But they've got a long ways to go.
Yeah, I think New Mexico, I have them there because they weren't as bad as the team at 12. Well, we both know it's Nevada, but weren't that bad. But I'm not going to jump on the Bronco Mendenhall hype train because just because you were a coach that was decent at one place a while ago doesn't mean you just have magic hands or the Midas touch or whatever you want to call it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but New Mexico's not been a good program. They've been a doormat, and unless something really changes, they're probably going to be that again this year.
Yeah, they got a long ways to go. Maybe we'll put them in a different spot next year if it looks like Bronco still has fire and energy to coach. But for now, they're 11. And Nevada at number 12 to wrap it up. New coach, Jeff Choate, coming out of Montana State. But this is a team that is perennially underperformed. He's got a large task ahead of him to try to remake that roster and that program.
Yeah, and he may end up having to take the Brent Brennan route where he won 3 games in 2 years, then turned San Jose State into something respectable. And I feel like that's the process that Nevada is going to have to go through. They've been horrible the last couple of years, and not a whole lot indicates that's going to change this year, but who knows? Maybe in a couple of years, it could happen. UNLV, San Jose State, they've both kind of gone through that where they were these terrible teams, moved up into a different tier. UNLV now looking at maybe they'll be a contender.
Yeah.
Maybe Nevada can do the same. We're going to have to find out. But, yeah, for now, Nevada's at the bottom, and I don't think anybody's going to have anything different.
No. And I know we're running out of time here, and we didn't do a lot of prep on Washington State and Oregon State. But Washington State, it looks like they're bringing back 55% of their production from a year ago. Oregon State, only 34%.
Yeah, they're 132nd out of 134 teams. And, for a team that went 8-5 last year, good but not great, losing a ton of production. That's why I think I said either this segment or last segment they could take a nosedive. That is very possible for Oregon State.
Yeah, so it'll be a very interesting season to watch upcoming for the Mountain West and for Utah State. Those are our power rankings, if you will, for the teams throughout the Mountain West Conference. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe. We'll see you back here next week. Remember, Full Court Press, only 4 to 5 now through the summer. You're on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, and streaming on 1069thefan.com.